everyone, welcome back to our modelled writing videos. In today's video, we are going to be looking at two task 1 questions for the IELTS writing part of the exam. So task 1, you'll be given a piece of data and then it's your job to, well, the task never changes actually. So we always have the task to select the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So we report back on this piece of data. However, the data changes, so you could have a bar chart or you could have a line graph, various different types, and that is what we are practicing in these videos, how to approach the various types of data. So today we'll be presented with the data, then we'll do a plan, and I'll show you how you can do that, and then we'll do the write-up as if we were in the exam itself. So it's really useful practice if you just want to get a few more tips on how to score highly in the task 1. Maybe you're not sure where to begin, how to structure it. All of these questions should be answered today, so you're in the right place. Okay, well, let's get started with the first task. And we're going to look at pie charts. Pie charts are fairly common, I would say, and definitely something to practice and be comfortable with. The question. The pie charts show the average consumption of food in the world in 2008 compared to two countries, China and India. Oh, so I'm thinking there might be 3 pie charts. The world, China and India. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and making comparisons where relevant. Okay, so here's the task. As I said, it stays the same. We need to select and report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. All right, let's have a look at the data. Here we go. Okay, so we've got the world, we've got China, and we've got India. And this is the average consumption of food. So, and we've got the key down here. So the blue is processed food, and this is how it's divided up. Okay. This yellow colour, vegetables and fruits, and how it's divided up. Red, animal food. And then green, nuts and seeds. Right, okay, so anything striking, anything that's jumping out to us initially. Vegetables and fruits are very high in all 3, and so is processed food as well. Okay, so those are the 2, they tend to be the 2 bigger ones. Animal food is quite high, but nuts and seeds vary between the 3 charts quite dramatically. Okay then, so let's go to our plan. Now, a plan is so important to help us stay on track, help us stay focused, and these are all things that go towards our band score. So, another thing that we have to do is we have to group these together into 2 groups. Now, it's really quite flexible in how we do this, so it's not something to worry about as long as you've got 2 logical groups and can show the examiner why. You don't have to say extensively, but just show or say, what they've got in common, why we're grouping them together. Then that's all we need to do. So there's a few ways which we could do this. We've obviously got 3 pie charts here. We could group 2 together and do 1 on its own. For this one, I quite like even numbers, so I might group together the variables down here. So I might do the 2 highest ones, which would be, let's do a space. We'll just note this down in our plan. Processed food, and let's do vegetables and fruit. Even though animal food is higher in India, we can still group it together to say for most of 2 out of 3. Vegetables and fruit. Okay. And then we've got our next group, animal food, nuts and seeds. Okay, so I think that's how I'm going to approach these groups today. So our overview then we want to think about. Now, for our overview, we want to make a sweeping statement, one that's going to, it's obviously based off the data, but it's not going to include any data. So you just want a general sort of theme. For example, processed food is the most consumed. Food is the most consumed for the world and the 2 countries. Something along these lines. And in our overview, I'll show you when we do the write-up, you can always put something that goes against that trend as well. So you might say processed food is the most consumed, while nuts and seeds are the least, maybe. Actually, good point to note, this is all in 2008, so we're going to be using past tense for this. That's important as well. Something that I'll be checking and editing myself for. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense to you at home. If you're following along, we've got our groupings and we've got our overview and the notes here. So why don't we go to the write-up and I'll show you how we can put this all together. So we've got the question here. We've got some useful words as well, actually. We might not need them all for pie charts, but these are very useful for bar charts and line graphs. However, I think it's nice to have them there. Synonyms for decrease, stayed the same, increase, and there's some adverbs here to describe trends as well. So how they did it, which is the adverbs lend themselves more to line graphs and bar charts, but that's okay. We can use it as inspiration for the pie charts today. Okay, so what do we need to do in task 1? Well, the first thing we need to do is something really important. And we need to paraphrase this first sentence here. The pie charts show the average consumption of food in the world in 2008 compared to 2 countries. Okay. We don't need to paraphrase every single word, that's okay. So we could say the pie charts display the maybe medium totals of different categories of food globally and in China and India. Globally in China and in India in 2008. It might be nice to use this word compared, food globally, compare it in comparison with, maybe. So if we're not sure how to fully paraphrase, we can just change the word form. In comparison with China and India in 2008. Okay, let's have a read back. The pie charts display the median totals of different categories of food globally in comparison with China and India in 2008? Maybe we can in 2008. Okay, I think that's good. So let's go to our sweeping statement then. We can start with a nice phrase like at first sight, in general, overall, on the whole. At first sight, processed foods took the highest share for all for all three areas, or maybe areas. At first sight, processed foods took the highest share for all three areas. Took the highest share of what? Took the highest share. Or maybe we could say processed foods were we didn't actually talk about food in the paraphrasing here, so that's a good point. The pie charts display the median total of different categories. Oh, we did of food globally. Okay, I think that's good. So at first sight, processed foods were the most eaten, past tense, for the three areas researched, whereas nuts and seeds were the least ingested. I'm thinking of another word for eaten then. At first sight, processed foods were the most eaten for the three areas researched, whereas nuts and seeds were the least ingested. I think that's okay. Okay, so that is our sweeping statement, our broad observation here. Now we can go into our groupings and we can pull the data. This is when we can use all the information. So our first grouping was processed foods and vegetables and fruit as well. Okay, so maybe we could start off with processed foods. So the highest portion of type of food for all three throughout was processed food, particularly considering when studying particularly the world at 41%. The highest portion of the highest share of type of food throughout was processed food, comma, particularly the world at 41%. There we go, that felt a bit wordy. The highest share of food throughout was processed food. Okay. Let's see, we could talk about India being 2% lower than the world. This was followed by India 2% less than the world. We don't have to report on every feature, and we can report it in different ways. So I'll show you how we can do it a bit differently. This was followed by India, 2% less than the world. China, we could bridge the gap now because China's vegetables and fruits are also very high. So we could talk about that together and then head into vegetables and fruits. China's portion of processed food was still the highest for the country at 34%. However, vegetables and fruits were only 2% less than this figure. Okay, so they were 32%. Okay, let's go into more vegetable and fruits. Okay, the world and India, however, had less of a proportion for this group. It was in the 20s. Both percentages were in the 20s. We could say a dramatic drop actually in India. So a significant drop was seen in India, where vegetables and fruits constituted 23%, less than a quarter. So we're finding different ways to report back on this data. Let's read it back and see how we're doing. The highest share of food throughout was processed food, particularly the world at 41%. This was followed by India, 2% less than the world. China's portion of processed food was still the highest for the country at 34%, maybe the highest type. However, vegetables and fruits were only 2% less than this figure. The world and India, however, had less of a proportion for this group. Both percentages were in the 20s. A significant drop was seen in India, where vegetables and fruits constituted 23%, less than a quarter. Okay, I think that's good. We've reported back, we're pulling the data here. So now let's go into our second group, which is going to be animal food and nuts and seeds. Animal food, for China and the world. For China and the world, where the third highest segment. We were the third highest food category. So even so, the world had 1% over a quarter at 26%. 26%. Okay. China, meanwhile, China's share of animal food was less than half of vegetables and fruits. Oh, we're checking our spelling. Vegetables and fruits. At 15%. Okay, so that's animal food. Now we can talk about nuts and seeds. And that was the, oh, actually, that was higher in China. So we could say nuts and seeds were also were the lowest or held the lowest figures. Also for 2 out of the 3 data sets. However, India's contribution, or India's another word for consumption, average eating was 11%, whereas the world's was strikingly lower at 4%. This was actually the lowest figure throughout. The lowest statistic throughout the entire study. Let's read this one back. Animal food for China and the world were the third highest category. Even so, the world had 1% over a quarter at 26%. China's share of animal food was less than half of vegetables and fruits at 15% of their. Nuts and seeds held the lowest figures for also for 2 out of the 3 data sets. India's average eating was 11%, whereas the world's was strikingly lower at 4%, the lowest statistic throughout the entire study. Okay, I think that's good. We've compared, we've contrasted, we've pulled the data. Let's count the words for this one. Okay then, so I've had a count of these words and that comes to 205. So I think that's a nice amount for this type of question. You can see how we've grouped them together, and we've of course started with paraphrasing and our overview. So that is the way that I structure every task 1, and hopefully you've been following along at home and that's all making sense how we approach this one. That was quite a nice one, I think, quite a straightforward one. You can see that even if there's 3 pie charts, which might seem a little bit intimidating or overwhelming, nevertheless, you can still group them together, and it's actually not so convoluted, that one. Okay. Well, let's now go on to another task, and this is going to look at a bar chart. Now, bar charts are quite common, I would say, definitely something to be comfortable with. They could be on their own, they could be multiple bar charts, they could be in conjunction with other types of data, so really something to make sure you're confident and happy with. Okay, the question. The graph shows British immigration to selected destinations between 2004 and 2007. Summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and making comparisons where relevant. Right, so we've got the same task, selecting and reporting the main features and making comparisons where relevant. Not all the time, just when they're particularly important. Okay, let's have a look at this data. Right, okay, so we've got countries on the x-axis. We've got Australia, Spain, New Zealand, USA and France. We've got the key to the years here and the different colours. And then we've got on the y-axis, the number of British people that have emigrated in the thousands. Okay then, so we've got a few things we can do with this one. Australia is very popular. First thoughts, initial thoughts, followed by Spain. France had a good year in 2005, had many Brits going there. Okay, let's have a think about how we can group this a bit more. So, we could go by country. There's an odd amount, so we'd have to do 2 and then 3 together. That could be okay. Or we could do years. Let's have a look at any 2 years particularly similar. So 2004 follows like a decreasing amount throughout. 2005 also decreased, but then shoots up for France. 2006 goes down and then up, like the 2005. And then 2007 does this, goes down. I think for ease, let's go for countries because otherwise I think I'm going to overcomplicate it if I go by years. So let's go Australia, let's go Spain. We can either include France in this one. Let's include France actually because they're all over then. Well, actually not all of them, but at least 1 year goes over 30,000. That's how we can group them. And then the last two, we've got New Zealand. New Zealand. And USA, which are all under the 30,000. Okay, so Australia, this is in the past tense again, saw the highest volume of British we could say expats, maybe. Oh, expatriates. Let me double check that word. Yes, so I think we're going to go for Australia for our overview, our sweeping statement. Or let's stick with immigrants. Who saw the least? Or we could say followed by Spain in this one. Just because it's hard to distinguish New Zealand and the USA, really. Okay, I think that's good. We've got our 2 groups and then we've got our overview. Let's go to the write-up and we can put this all together now. And we've got our useful vocabulary this time, which will help us, and the adverbs will help us here as well. So let's start by paraphrasing. The graph shows British emigration to selected destinations between 2004 and 2007. Well, we can be more specific. The bar chart displays information about regarding the volume of British citizens settling in various countries between the years 2004 and 2007. Okay, so the bar chart displays information regarding the volume of British citizens settling in various countries between the years 2004 and 2007. Okay, I think that's good. Let's now go to our overview. So I can start it by saying something like, in general, Australia housed the highest number of British or of immigrants from the UK, followed by Spain. In general, Australia housed the highest number of immigrants from the UK, followed by Spain. Okay, so let's start off with Australia, Spain, and France. So, Australia, let's group them all together and show why we're putting them together. Spain and France had at least 1 year with over 30,000 new residents, we'll say. Okay, so let's dive into Australia. Australia had the most significant numbers for all years. In particular, let's talk about 2006. In particular, 2006, which saw, we've got increments of 10, so that's about maybe 52,000 arrive. Okay. Next, let's talk about Spain. Okay. Spain however, did not reach over 50,000. The most striking years were almost equal. And we've got 2004 and 2005 here. Were almost equal. Maybe we could do a full stop here just to save it from being too convoluted. The most striking years were almost equal. 2004, let's say 34,000, and 2005. Oh, maybe 34 and a half. It's so close. Or just over 34. Or maybe we can say 35 actually. Just over 35,000. Okay, let's talk about the France 2005 year, which saw a significant amount. So 2005 was also the year that France saw a So a rocket in figures compared to other years at, maybe 33. Right. Okay, let's read this back and see how it's sounding. Australia, Spain, and France all had at least 1 year with over 30,000 new residents. Australia had the most significant numbers for all years, in particular 2006, which saw 52,000 arrive. Spain, however, did not reach over 50,000 in any time period. The most striking years were almost equal. 2004, 35,000, and 2005, just over 35,000. 2005 was also the year that France saw a rocket in figures, maybe a surge in figures compared to other years at 33,000 Brits. Okay, I think that's good. Now we can talk about our next group, which is New Zealand and the USA, and the fact that they remain under 30,000. So New Zealand, let's do a capital letter here. New Zealand and the USA, on the other hand, did not exceed 30,000 did not exceed 30,000. In fact, they were closer to 20,000 per year. Okay, let's talk about how New Zealand's numbers steadily decreased throughout as time went on. As time went on, New Zealand's statistics steadily declined, and in 2007 they hit precisely 20,000 new residents from the British Isles. Different ways of saying Britain. Okay, so now let's talk about the USA. So the USA, meanwhile, fluctuated, which means the numbers went up and down. These seem fluctuated in figures with 2004 and 2006 having notably similar, having a notably similar volume, approximately about 24,000. The 1 year to hit below 20,000 for the USA was 2005. And we could do a nice bracket. Oh, well, actually, this is an increment of 20 here. So this is probably 16, maybe? Let's just have a think about this. So yes, if that's about 10, 15, or maybe a bit more, maybe about 17. roughly 17,000. Okay, let's read this back and see how it's sounding. New Zealand and the USA, on the other hand, did not exceed 30,000. In fact, they were closer to 20,000 per year. As time went on, New Zealand's statistics steadily declined, and in 2007 they hit precisely 20,000 new residents from the British Isles. The USA, meanwhile, fluctuated in figures, with 2004 and 2006 having a notably similar volume, approximately 24,000. The one year to hit below 20,000 for the USA was 2005, roughly 17,000. Okay, I think that's good. We've just gone back, checked the spelling, checked the grammar. Now let's check the words. Okay, so that reaches a total of 198 words. So a nice amount there. We've got our two groupings, we've got our paraphrasing and our overview. So I think that's a successful essay there. Okay, brilliant. Well, I hope that's been helpful today. Do let us know if you have any questions or comments about what we've looked at today. We've done pie charts and we've done a bar chart as well. So I hope that's been useful for you at home if you've been following along. And we will see you in the next video.